when people talk about diversity and inclusion, what's important about diversity and inclusion, diversity of thought is so important. We get wrapped around diversity of thought from the standpoint of black or white or religion. And we're not having a whole lot of conversations about diversity of thought from somebody who grew up poor, who didn't know where their next meal was going to come from. We're not thinking about diversity of thought from the perspective of somebody who grew up with a really rough childhood, who was molested as a child. Like the diversity of thought that all these other things can bring in that are beyond just the way we look and the color of our skin. And until we can really learn how to embrace different types of diversity as well, we're doomed. We'll never really have diversity of thought. It's diversity in a box.
Right now, in our society, we're having a privilege conversation. We're having a privilege competition. Who had more privilege for whatever reason, if you're paying attention. And one thing I always talk about, especially when I was on the campaign trail, was I feel like our family, we had parent privilege.
Absolutely.
Now, this is something that nobody wants to talk about, is parent privilege. And parent privilege actually sees no race, religion, color, or creed. Having two parents that were there for us, that disciplined us, that raised us in Christ. We had a father that didn't miss a game that we had. I mean, I spent 3 years on varsity football. My dad did not miss a single football game. The idea of the sacrifices that they made for us to be here is a privilege that, quite frankly, I wouldn't trade for the world. But I think what you're trying to get to, and I totally agree with you, and that's like, let's stop having these, privilege competition wars.
Privilege offs.
It's
like you're
these privilege offs.
Privilege off. You're more privileged than I am. Like, I had it harder.
Well, I had it harder than you, or you had it better than me, or you look like this. Therefore, you don't know the half of what people have gone through in their entire lives. And just because they may have a lot of money or a lot of things, that doesn't mean that you would trade places with them if you knew the full story.
Hey, remember that song, that hymn? What a privilege.
What a privilege to. It's the three sisters.
I still remember that in childhood. It's the song, What a Friend You Have in Jesus. And then they have the point, what a privilege. And I'll never forget, we were listening to that in church. And you asked Mom after that, you're like, Mom, what's a privilege? So it's a way longer word than it seems like it should be. But we decide to have these privilege offs where we want to tell people how you had it better than this person, you had it better than this person. And quite frankly, it goes back to even the idea of Native Americans. Everybody wants to talk about, well, our background sucked more than your background, or our background was worse. It's like, all right, guys, like everybody's had, like, let's figure out how to move forward. It goes back to the story of Esther, right? So my daughter was on a tire swing. She was pushing a tire swing with a friend of hers. And she would push the tire swing, would be on it, and then her friend would come and push the tire swing, and Esther would ride on it. And they're going back and forth, and I'm just watching them at the park. It's a very nice day. Esther comes back to me after pushing the tire swing. And once again, from the mouths of kids, you hear such profound insights. I asked Esther what I realize now was an idiotic and loaded question. I asked her, who's stronger? She wasn't even thinking about that. She was having fun with a friend. And I made it this competition because that's how we've become conditioned and programmed. They have it right. That's how we've become conditioned and programmed.
What'd she say?
She looked at me and she said, Dada, we're both strong.
Yeah. That might be one of the most profound things I think I've ever heard in my life.
We're both strong. Somebody else doesn't have to be weak
for you to be strong.
You
can both be strong.
We can get to a place where we have change and where we have compromise without somebody being weak
and trampled upon. The pie's big enough for everybody.
Yes, you're all pretty. It's
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
But that's not the way that we want to see it. We think that life becomes a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
And it's not a zero-sum game.